Four individuals find themselves in a mysterious and unknown location, under the control of a strict game master whose voice commands them. They must obey or face electrifying penalties. The game master, known as the ruler, observes them from a secret room filled with surveillance equipment. Each of the four strangers has been implanted with a mysterious microchip. As the narrative unfolds, an elderly man regains consciousness in a dimly lit room, where he sees a woman with long brown hair. While he is checking her vital signs, the lights suddenly turn on, revealing two more people caught in the same bizarre situation. A mysterious male voice then orders them to wake up. The women, still unconscious, are shockingly awakened through their microchip implants by the ruler. The voice then informs the group that they must follow his instructions to survive, emphasizing their isolation by stating that no one is searching for them. The captives soon learn that they are part of a sinister game where they are identified only by numbers. They are forbidden from speaking, and forgetting their assigned number leads to punishment. The game master also warns that disobedience by one person will result in another receiving an electric shock. He makes it clear that teamwork is unnecessary, as he intends to pit them against each other. After the game master's announcement, the elderly man takes the initiative, stepping into the middle of the room and motioning for the others to come closer. Utilizing sign language, he conveys a message of solidarity to the group, emphasizing that they are not adversaries but allies. He instills a sense of hope, suggesting that together, they might find a way out of their predicament. In response, a woman with short hair, showing determination, starts inspecting the room's door for a possible escape route. However, their captor, the ruler, intervenes by announcing the start of the game. Suddenly, he administers an electric shock to the woman attempting to escape, using this as a harsh reminder that despite their strengths, each captive has vulnerabilities. The elderly man, feeling a sense of despair, sits down on the floor. This act of vulnerability elicits a caring gesture from the woman with long brown hair, who offers him comfort. Meanwhile, the resolute woman with short hair communicates silently with the blonde individual in the group, signaling the importance of continuing their fight for survival. She then joins the others, providing both comfort and support as they brace themselves for the challenges ahead. When the old man gestures that they still don't know their assigned numbers, the strong woman takes it upon herself to investigate for clues. She cautiously goes to the room's corner, discovering a blue flask containing liquid. However, as they attempt to open the mysterious container, the ruler interjects abruptly, announcing that the first game is about uncovering their assigned numbers. He then directs the captives to assemble in a circle and instructs number 1 to jump. With no knowledge of their numbers, the participants look at each other in confusion. They search for clues on their bodies but find nothing. The old man suggests they all jump together, but this action results in a painful shock for the three of them, leaving them in agony. Meanwhile, the robust, short-haired player remains unharmed, prompting them to realize she is number 1. However, in response to their strategy, the voice issues a reminder that cheating goes against the game's rules. The ruler commands the 3 unidentified players to stand in front of the first player. He then orders the 4th player to strike the first, but when there's no response, he shocks the elderly man, revealing him as number 4. The ruler then rearranges them, placing the elderly man and the others in front of number 1. He challenges the strong-willed female player to choose someone for an electric shock. Her refusal results in her shock. Given a second chance, number 1 hesitates and avoids making a decision, leading to the elderly man being shocked instead. For the 3rd time, number 1 is pressured to choose, and under duress, she points to the woman with long brown hair, who then suffers the shock. This decision creates a tense moment, with the shocked woman expressing disappointment towards number 1. Despite this, the elderly man shows compassion by helping her back to her feet, illustrating the complex dynamics and moral dilemmas they face in this perilous game. In an unexpected turn, Number 1 spots a bucket hidden in a corner of the room. The ruler explains its purpose as a makeshift restroom. The woman with short hair, understanding the situation, signals to the others to give her some privacy while she uses the bucket. During this time, the game master sternly warns them against making any mess, threatening that any spills must be cleaned up in a degrading manner. After using the bucket, Number 1 goes to the blonde woman, who is visibly scared and believes that the game master may intend to kill them. To soothe her fears, the woman with short hair encourages her to remain calm, reminding her that they are on the same side. This gesture of solidarity leads to the anxious blonde woman embracing her, finding comfort in their unity amidst the dire circumstances they face. The woman with long brown hair, feeling thirsty, tries to drink from a flask, but Number 4 quickly stops her, aware of the ruler's surveillance. Number 1 suggests the drink might be poisoned, sparking a tense, wordless debate among the group about who should test the liquid. The thirsty woman asks the elderly man, Number 4, to try it. He cautiously tastes the liquid and confirms it's water. As she reaches for the bottle, Number 1 intervenes, insisting they all share it, leading to a scuffle over the flask. Observing their conflict, the ruler forcefully steps in, ordering them to release the flask. He commands them to line up and lowers their heads, reprimanding them with a shock for unauthorized touching of the flask. To add to their distress, he manipulatively increases the room's temperature, intensifying their thirst. As the temperature drops, the woman with long brown hair strangely begins to allure Number 4, which prompts the old man to sit beside her. Shortly after, she shares that Number 1 appears strong-willed, implying she's skeptical of trusting her. Shortly after, the flirtatious player proposes to the senior citizen to ally against Number 1. The elderly man readily agrees and vows to protect her. Meanwhile, Number 1 approaches the blonde participant, who is desperately thirsty. Seeking to assist her friend, the strong woman retrieves the flask. However, Number 4 steps in, emphasizing the need for approval from the ruler. Despite the reminder, the determined player persists in obtaining the container, prompting the elderly man to seize it, ultimately leading to a silent struggle. To resolve the situation, Number 4 takes the bottle to a corner and empties the water into the bucket. He then turns toward the camera and verbally communicates with the game master, saying, "No water, no fight." Unfortunately, the commander responds by shocking him for speaking and altering the game's rules. While the old man suffers through the electric shocks, his female ally attends to him. Desperate to quench their thirst, they consume each other's sweat. The game abruptly changes when the ruler announces the end of the game. This news triggers anxiety in the unidentified woman with long brown hair, who shares her worry with the old man about not having been assigned a number. He responds with a comforting hug. Meanwhile, the numberless blonde woman, upset about not having water, blames Number 1 and shoves her, leading to a silent but heated argument. The ruler then orders them to form a circle and directs Number 1 to instruct the third player to sit. The fierce woman, uncertain of who Number 3 is, guesses it's the woman with long brown hair. However, when she sits, the ruler shocks her, revealing that she is Number 2 and the blonde woman is Number 3. Following this revelation, Number 1 becomes frantic and tries to break the windows, then tries to bang on the door after stripping her clothes, only to be shocked again by the ruler. Number 3 steps in to cover and console her as she collapses on the floor. Watching this, Number 2 expresses to Number 4 her concern that Number 1's erratic actions might bring trouble to all of them. The elderly man initiates a conversation with the first player, inquiring about any escape routes she might have discovered. She dishearteningly tells him that the doors are too solid, dampening their hopes of escape. This news causes Number 3 to break down in tears and shout out in despair. In a compassionate moment, the fierce woman embraces the blonde woman, comforting her with a kiss. Their emotional moment is cut short by the ruler, who poses a hypothetical question involving an escort and a client who has a heart attack, asking whether she should flee or try to save the man. Before they can answer, He asks number 3 if she would accept a severe electric shock in place of number 2. She refuses, leaving the choice in the hands of the game master. As a result, the ruler shocks number 1, provoking number 2 to scream and try to intervene, only to be shocked herself along with the fierce woman. Both fall to the floor, unconscious. Number 4 and number 2 quickly begin life-saving efforts, performing mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and CPR, successfully reviving numbers 1 and 3. The game master then threatens number 3 with further punishment, causing her to faint. The elderly man rushes to assist her, and once she comes to, the woman with long brown hair slowly stands and begins to dance oddly in front of him. Approaching the elderly man, she suggests that they should trust each other and proposes they attempt to escape together. Suddenly, the players hear the sound of a helicopter overhead, which prompts them to shout and signal for help, except for number 1. Upon witnessing this, the ruler comments on the strong-willed woman's reaction, emphasizing that individuals lose their human behavior when the mind is afraid. Shortly after, the game master calls number 2, causing her to raise her hand to show her acknowledgement. He then asks her if she has a reasonable consideration of number 4, prompting her to nod. Next, the voice inquires the same question to number 1 about number 3. However, when she doesn't answer immediately, he electrocutes her. When the strong-willed woman nods, the ruler interprets her reaction as lying and accuses her of tricking him. Following this, the game master suggests they play hide-and-seek, but immediately changes his mind when he realizes the participants have no place to conceal themselves. Soon after, he asks if they will end another human's life, prompting number 3 to scream and cry. As punishment for number 3's disobedience to the no-speaking rule, he shocks number 2. A moment later, the ruler asks number 2 if she agrees if he intends to reward number 4, prompting her to nod slightly. Afterward, he directs his attention to number 3, asking her what she thinks of the old man. In response, the blonde woman forms a cross with her fingers near her chest, implying that she thinks of the senior citizen as knowledgeable in saving lives. Shortly after, the game master directs his attention to number 1, only to tease her that he doesn't need her opinion. The game master dramatically alters the group's perception of number 4 by revealing a dark secret about his past. He claims that the elderly man, once a medic, was involved in ending the lives of hospital patients to sell their organs. Confronted with this accusation, the old man breaks down in tears, admitting the truth of these statements. In a gesture of support, the woman with long brown hair comforts him, declaring her allegiance to him. The game then takes a more disturbing turn when the ruler declares that number 3 is intended as a reward for number 4, implying they must be intimate together. He threatens to harm number 2 if the blonde woman does not comply. In a desperate effort to save number 2, the long brown-haired woman pleads with number 3 to follow the command. When number 3 resists, number 2 steps in, offering to take her place. As the narrative progresses, the situation escalates. While the elderly man and the substitute participant engage in coerced intimacy, the ruler reveals that number 2's younger brother was a victim of number 4's past crimes. Enraged by this revelation, number 2 reacts violently, biting the old man's tongue. In response, he starts to strangle her, leading to a physical struggle where she repeatedly hits his head on the floor. After the altercation, number 2 discards the severed tongue in the bucket and is helped by number 1 to get dressed. The game master presents the 3 women with a harrowing choice. They can save themselves by physically attacking number 4, an action they undertake with reluctance. During the assault, the voice notices number 3's lack of full participation and discreetly shocks her as a consequence. Once they've completed the violent act against the elderly man, they are instructed by the game master to move his body outside the room, with a stern warning not to step through the doorway themselves, as it would be fatal. They comply, and as they're closing the door, number 2, still angered by the thought of what she believed the old man had done to her brother, spits on him. However, in a twisted revelation, the ruler bursts into laughter and informs them that number two's brother died in a different hospital, meaning the old man was innocent of this accusation. Realizing her mistake, number two is filled with remorse for how she treated the elderly man. The ruler then comments on the ease with which people can be manipulated by fear. This statement infuriates the woman with long brown hair, prompting her to verbally lash out at him, only to be met with a retaliatory electric shock as punishment. Meanwhile, number three approaches number one and offers advice, encouraging her to be less fierce. The blonde woman then reminds her that it's her turn to take care of number one since she looked after her initially. Following their discussion, they seal their agreement with a warm hug. During their conversation, the first player subtly signals to her fellow participant that she resembles someone she knows. In response, the blonde woman acknowledges the comment, mentioning that she often hears that comparison. Shortly after, number one confers with number three, suggesting that number two could assist them in their escape. However, the blonde woman counters this idea, expressing her distrust for the player with long brown hair due to her act of biting off the old man's tongue. Suddenly, the ruler speaks again, indicating his intention to unveil another secret. He engages in a conversation with number one, inquiring if she had broken her friend's leg when they were both young ballerinas, and subsequently abandoned her in the cold snow out of jealousy. Upon hearing the accusation, the woman, guilt-ridden and with tears, bows her head towards the floor, begging the game master to stop. However, the game master punishes her once more, administering a shock for speaking with words. Amidst her screams of pain, the ruler reveals a shocking truth. The friend number one left in the cold as a young ballerina was his daughter, and one of the patients number four had ended was his wife. Furthermore, the game master's father lost his life because of number two, who turns out to be an escort who prioritized evading the police over saving her old client who had a heart attack. In a tearful tone, the voice confesses that he had spent money to locate all of them, driven by a desire for revenge.